Well, welcome to the Discover Fort Smith podcast. My name's Josh Bufing. I'm with the city of Fort Smith, and I'm with my fantastic co-host, Emily Horn with the Convention Visitors Bureau, also known as Discover Fort Smith. And today we've got our very special guest with us, the music director and conductor for the Fort Smith Symphony, John Jetter. Thank you so much for being here, John.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourselves. How did you end up getting to Fort Smith, Arkansas? Or are you from here? I don't know.
No. I'm originally from Southern California, and I studied music growing up, of course. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, after going to my undergrad and graduate, schools for music, I got involved in the League of American Orchestras. It's a different name now, but that's kind of the national organization for orchestras. Mm-hmm. And they did conducting workshops where you would go and work with famous conductors. And they kind of, although they always said it was, this is for education, they were on the lookout for people. It's really what it was. And so as a result of doing those, I started getting asked to audition for assistant conductor auditions, associate conductor auditions with larger orchestras, and then music director positions. So in that process, it took a few years. And I had a very busy year of auditioning for music director positions, and one of them was here. And ultimately, I enjoyed Fort Smith. The orchestra at that time was a very modest, on every level, a community orchestra. It wasn't real strong artistically. There was a lot of enthusiasm for it, and it's okay that I say it because that's part of the process, So I was here, and then ultimately, I didn't think I wanted to come here. Because I was concerned about the orchestra. They really had to get better. So the board of directors said, we totally agree, and there's a lot of interest. We really want to make the orchestra better, and we think that if there's a push for that there'll be a lot of support in the community. It's been told to us we want to support a quality thing. So I thought, okay, I'll give that a try, and we'll see how it goes. And that was, it's 27 years later. At the time of this, recording, I'm just finishing we just finished our 101st season, so it's my 27th season. And the orchestra's obviously totally changed.
And in my understanding, it's the oldest symphony.
It's the oldest orchestra in the state, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but we're also, maybe for an orchestra in a town our size, we're probably the most listened to internationally because of all of our recordings. Yeah. And we've been able to do some really cool things as well as that, which has really made it a great place to be music director. It's really, taken off.
Yeah, because, I think recently you guys won was it a Grammy?
No, we were in the mix. I'm a voting member, and I'm in the Texas chapter. We won, there's some other awards. There's World Entertainment Awards. I think we got Best Classical Performance. And then I was actually just looking today, I think it's called the Lit Music Awards, and it's a Singapore, New York-based arts organization. And I think we won two golds. That's and amazing. 3. I don't remember. It sounds like, there's so many I don't remember. I don't mean it that way. Yeah. But it's just, the Grammy process is very interesting. Yeah. And I continue. And then sometimes I record with other orchestras if we can't fit it in our schedule. So sometimes Knoxville's records will say, hey, can you go to Vienna to do this, or Germany or Sweden? So,
What an evolution from where you began 27 years ago to where you're at now. Yeah. What changes were made along the way to get to where you're at? Because, if you go now, it's world class.
Yeah, if you go now, it's like, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, I think, I think first and foremost, it was deciding on a set of standards. Do we really want to play well, and do we want to, what do we want to do? And the idea, just over as time went by, it's what are we doing? What's best for the organization? What's best for the community? What's the best way to present music? Mm-hmm. And I'd say, the short version is, after all this time, we present orchestral music to the community. And that can be classical music as one component, but film music, holiday music. We've done symphonic jazz concerts, symphonic rock. We're doing next coming season, we're doing a big
Chicago,
the band Chicago, we're doing a big symphonic concert.
Yes.
That's gonna be so
Yeah,
good.
It's pretty. It's
awesome.
It's gonna be great.
Brass Transit is the band, and they're unbelievable. I think all the brass players, they all have their doctorates. I mean, they're, I love Chicago. These guys are probably better than Chicago, to be perfectly honest. So you're going to get.
That is amazing.
Yeah, anyway. And we made education a big priority. So we do a lot of education programs. We've probably had student interactions at this point, probably 75 to 80,000, because some of these programs go back, from when I started. And but the main thing is, for no other reason than just what you learn when you're 5 years old, is I wanted an organization that was a real positive organization where musicians could come to it and just really enjoy playing, because music is supposed to be this very positive thing, which it is. But in the classical music world, it's very competitive. When you get in front of a big orchestra in a big city, it's not necessarily the most fun. I think a lot of people in the audience would be surprised what the tension there are in rehearsals and behind the scenes. And I don't think that's healthy for any organization. Doesn't matter what it is. So I would say one of the things that's evolved is, in our region, we're the fun orchestra to play in. We have a huge list of musicians who want to come and play because they hear about how much fun. Or we might have a substitute musician come in and play a concert, and then they'll immediately say, "As if there's any way I can come back and play. I had such a great time."
That's amazing.
Awesome.
It's really cool. And the orchestra, they do a great job. The musicians do a great job, but they're really supportive of everyone. It's kind of like a lot of them are friends, so it's a chance to get together and good to see you. And it doesn't feel like work at all.
It's a community, it sounds like.
Yeah. But they're all very professional, And they'll play in other orchestras and they'll enjoy it. But I hear things all the time. I play there, but it's, it's pretty tense, And in the classical music world, and I get it, but, a lot of us take ourselves very seriously. And I do think that that's a mistake. I mean, you can do a great job and still be, not be too full of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And especially in classical music, in most cases, we didn't write it. We're just playing it.
Yeah.
And although that's a challenge, I think a healthy approach is to, be humble about it, be enthusiastic, and to enjoy. I think the more music you like, the better off you are. It's like food, right? Those people who are really boring tend to like 4 things. They'll eat the same 4 things over and over again, right? And the people you really want to hang out with are the ones, let's go to this place. Let's try this place. Oh, I love this.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So, okay, what do you think a good orchestra does for a community?
Well, a lot of things from, we, even though a lot of the musicians don't live here, and we can talk about that later, they come up to play, musically, we're the home team. So it's great pride for the community, especially when we do these international projects. I mean, it's great. And I think we can help quite a bit, and we have helped quite a bit with quality of life for really all ages. I'd say particularly young people. Our educational programs focus on, you'd think, on music, of course. Not really. We use music to get the message across for kids to have a creative component in their lives. I mean, I say on stage, to varying degrees of, consternation, stay off your phones, get off your phone. Or if someone and the next time you can do cool things on your phone, but have you ever went to grab your phone, but instead, why don't you grab pencil and paper, or just do, you're young, you can do music in school. We do it. One program we do the year you can sign up for orchestra, band, and choir. You can do orchestra, band, and choir in your school around here for free, Or, you don't do that, study dance, study theater, write poetry. Maybe you want to do filmmaking. Just do something where you're creative, and that's going to be something that you can carry for the rest of your life. And we do that through, I guess you could say, the production values that we can present on stage, because kids know, through your phone or whatever, they're used to seeing the highest production values, and you can watch a Marvel movie or whatever. So, they know when it's low quality.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to really do that. So I think and that pushes over into their parents. We do at our subscription concerts. I do a little bit, I wouldn't say education, but if we're doing a classics program, I might talk a little bit about it from the stage, which I think adds a really interesting component. It's not really educational component, but it does help. It's like the food analogy. You have something and it's really good, and you'll say, this is really good. And then what is the second thing you will say is, well, you'll ask what's in it, right? So if you tell people what's in it before they hear it, a little bit, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I think those sort of things with presenting music in a way that only an orchestra can, I think it's a huge quality of life issue. And as we're seeing now, a lot of people are moving to Fort Smith. We have a large international component, right, with the FMS program.
Right.
And all those people who are coming from all over, they're coming from cultures where art and music and theater is a huge deal. So it's great to see that coming in. So you've got that whole, so everything's kind of like, it's like this big mixing pot,
Yeah.
of arts and culture. So
Yeah.
One thing I feel like you guys do just a really good job of is providing a variety of programming in the season.
Yeah.
And it like you said before, it's not just classical. You bring in film score. You guys did. I was telling them earlier, I went to the JKC Sellers.
yeah,
Taylor Swift.
Hit. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're reaching a variety of people, like multiple ages, multiple generations who have different interests. And what goes into planning your season?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
how
assuming
do you
that's
choose?
intentional. Yeah.
Well, so at the time of this interview, our season just ended. Our X season just I don't want to date it, right? But it's actually so this season ended, and we're in what I'm doing right now is next season was programmed more or less like a year ago, but there's a lot of details. So I'm finishing up that for the coming year. And then actually a big part of the summer is getting the season afterwards done. So I plan out 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And I'm really, as part of the music director role is deciding on the programming, trying to have a great mix. And there's all sorts of other things you have to look into about how much rehearsal time we have, music costs. Does this orchestra require, 130 musicians versus 60 musicians? And we don't do as many concerts maybe as we would like. So for people who buy season tickets, which is most of our audience, I sort of have to program over like a 3 or 5 year cycle. So, but it's fun to do that. And then, as you mentioned, we have a chamber music series. So that would be like doing all Taylor Swift. We take the chamber music possibilities to maybe cover some areas that we can't cover, on the full stage. And then, depending on the year, we might do an outdoor concert. We'll do free outdoor concerts sometimes.
Like your Symphony on the Green.
Yeah, Symphony on the Green.
That was my first experience.
Okay.
After moving here with hearing the orchestra. I was kind of blown away. I was like,
my kids loved it too.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
because you guys were playing some, I think at that time, some Star Wars, some
probably.
Harry
John
Potter.
Williams of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you had the classical, and then you had the choir from the
That's
university.
right. That's
and-
right. I forget we did. What was the choir did? Oh, they did music. We did music from
Adele.
Avatar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we might have. You're right. We might have
think it was
had
an
like
Adele.
something from Skyfall, like maybe
Yes.
someone saying.
There was a singer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
what goes into preparing for a concert? From your perspective, I can imagine what a musician goes through. They're rehearsing their parts, but as a conductor, how do you prepare for a concert?
Well, fortunately, I know what's happening a few years in advance.
Yeah.
So, I've got my scores and, I'll do, obviously, there's score preparation where you might sit at the piano. Sometimes you sit at a desk, you're marking things, you're trying to learn how the whole thing is put together. You might, depending on the piece, there might be a lot of actually very analytical analysis of it, like the form of it and different sections and things like that, or how figuring out all the phrase ending. These are 8-bar phrases. There's a 7-bar phrase, there's a 6-bar, and then another 8. It helps you learn the whole piece. And ultimately, you kind of want to be able to somehow imagine or take in the whole piece kind of at one moment. You get to a point in the piece where you never, this kind of music, it takes a lifetime to understand, right? And then you look at the piece, maybe you do the same symphony again in 7 or 8 years, and it's like looking at it fresh. But there's a lot of that sort of preparation. And then in this particular orchestra, in this situation, I also have a really strong administrative role with the organization, which is pretty unique, actually. Sort of fell into that here when there was we were short an executive director. There's usually an administrative head of an orchestra. And I sort of filled in, and that was like 15 or 16 years ago. I'm still basically doing it. So, there's things like I make sure we have an orchestra librarian, but, I'm deciding the music, which edition. It's like, we're going to do Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Well, there's a bunch of different editions of it, different editors. They all basically sound the same from the general public standpoint. But for us, there's things to take into consideration. So you have to figure that out. Which editions? I do all the musician contracting. So we need ex-musicians for this, There's usually always a musician who something comes up and they're sick and maybe there might be a last-minute substitution. I have to find someone. And, I'm also, as we're getting close to a concert, I'm also involved in a lot of non-music things. I have a great staff, and they put it all together, but it's kind of making sure the overall arc of it works. Or maybe they're going to do some sort of pre-concert event, so let's try to have it work with the theme. So they might say, well, I want to do this. How can you, make a theme out of it? We've had some... we had like a whiskey tasting and once in a bourbon tasting before. It's like, okay, we got to figure out how does this English bourbon work with the Germanic program? So
you guys have done some over at the Bakery District.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So you don't learn that in the music school. And then there's
you did a great job. I was there.
Okay.
And you kind of explained the historicity of the pieces that were about to happen. That was great. I loved it.
Okay.
But I'm nerdy like that. I love things like that. So I'm like, I'm eating it up, you know?
All right. Okay. I fooled him. So there's a lot. And, conducting it's you kind of hit your stride as a conductor when you get into your 70s. There's a conductor right now, Herbert Blumstead, who's very active. He doesn't have an orchestra. He's guest conducts. He's 97.
Wow.
And he's,
Is that what you imagine yourself doing at 97?
I know. I know for a long time, and I've seen it actually. I think things have changed probably, but you can find online, go to insurance providers, and sometimes they will list jobs with life expectancy, and if they include symphony conductors, it's like way up at the top.
Wow.
Yeah. That's not why I chose to do it.
Yeah.
But, I think I don't know what it is. I think you're like, I don't know. All these musicians are playing and working so hard. I think like you're sucking the life out of all these other people. And that just gives you, you last forever. I don't know what it is. I don't know.
I will say, because I lived in Memphis for many, many years, and they have a symphony up there and a symphony chorus.
Yeah.
And I was involved in the symphony chorus for several years, and we did some really cool stuff. And there is nothing like being a part of a choir and hearing that orchestra playing. There's something that just is life-giving and energy-giving to have that sound right there. It's powerful.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like it.
Yeah, and there's really nothing else quite like it, really. Yeah. That's, going back to what you can bring to the community. There's really, nothing like that acoustic sound of an orchestra playing Harry Potter or, Handel's Messiah or whatever. It's a unique thing. Yeah. And, I think one of the biggest challenges, unfortunately, is a lot of people, maybe some people even watching this, listening to this, is the perception that it's like really boring. It's like they'd rather do anything than go to a symphony concert. And, I understand that. And I have been to concerts where I would rather have, not been there, not mine. but because I'm busy. But so what I would say, well, really anything, movies can be boring, classical music can be boring. I totally get that. And I think we're very mindful of that. The orchestra is very mindful. So, they work really hard. The concerts are really exciting. That music can be really exciting on a totally different level, right? And I think it's it's an incredible type of music. There's other types of music that are, we try to be very universal and take the same energy idea if we're doing an all blues concert, which we did recently. It's the same, for me anyway, it's the same aesthetic, really. I mean, I'm just as interested in doing that. I'm just as interested in doing the holiday concert as I am doing a real heavy symphonic program.
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying that we have in marketing a lot. It's like, you're not necessarily your audience.
Exactly.
And so keeping in mind that perspective, it sounds like you guys are always, you're always thinking about how to make it interesting and how to provide variety and how to not be that boring concert that people are like, ugh.
Yeah. You always seem so passionate about it. I watch you conduct and I'm like, this guy's into it. Like, how do you maintain that passion,
Well, I cheat because I get to pick all the music.
Yeah.
So, that said, there's only been one concert, I think, so far. I think it was for my 20th season or 25th, I don't remember, where I thought, I'm just as a gimmick, I'll pick pieces that I like the most.
Yeah.
So that's really the only, I never normally say, well, I like this. But a lot of my colleagues will do that. Well, how come you, well, I always wanted to conduct that piece. It's like, no, that's not, there's a bigger fish to fry, So, you just try to keep it interesting. I mean, I have great people to work with, and it's that real positive environment, right?
Right.
So that makes a huge difference, and that helps us work, I think, as hard as we can. Helps us work very hard and very enthusiastically, and maybe even very intensely, but without any sort of fear, really, because that's not a just and a very open attitude. Do the best job you can, especially in classical music. Don't make mistakes. Don't make any mistakes, and that's hugely crippling. Actually, if you want to make mistakes, be a musician who's saying, I don't want to make any mistakes. That's it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It produces so much fear.
Yeah.
And I think fear as a basis for anything is not a good foundation.
No. And just from my perspective, a lot of the big, very famous orchestras where, that technical level is very high and there's that expectation. A lot of times for me, it's not terribly interesting or it's not terribly musical. So I think that orchestras like ours sometimes you have this great advantage to be able to, we don't have those constraints.
Yeah.
And it's technically, maybe it's not the level of Chicago Symphony, but it's high enough to where you can present, something that's really terrific.
Yeah.
And, it's been a really good, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's all positive.
So you didn't get into this for the life expectancy. Why did you get into this? What
I don't know.
Here?
Well, and I used to be sort of quiet about this, but actually with the FMS mission, so when I was growing up, it's like, I'm either going to try to join the military and be a pilot. I didn't care. I could fly helicopters, jets, transports. I didn't care.
But you do now, right?
Because I did.
Yeah, okay.
I had a license a long time ago.
Okay.
And because I was growing up in Southern California and a number of years back, and one of the things about living there is it was a huge military part of the country, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, many bases, a lot of manufacturing. So I was really interested in that. That was kind of maybe the cool thing, loving planes and all that, going to air shows. But, studying music was something, I kept kind of going back and forth. What am I going to do when I grow up? Depending on the day, I would have told you one or the other. But ultimately, when it came time to choose, I pretty much decided I think I want to try, join in. I would maybe try to be in the Navy to try to fly. But I knew that I just didn't have the personality. And listen, the military is great. I have nothing negative to say. It's all very positive. But I guess you could say I had more of a creative personality. And when I was doing my flying, there were just like, it's funny, doing the exacting things that I had to do, when when the air traffic control would say, hold at 3,000 feet, that went in here, and that meant hold anywhere from 2,500 feet to 35. And they're like, no, you have to be, and just that exacting thing.
Yeah.
Because in music it's exacting too, but there's an expressive quality to where it's exact, but it also isn't.
It's open for interpretation.
A little bit, yeah. And there's no open to. I'm going to land this way this time. No, on this airport, there's none of that.
Yeah.
So and it's a decision that, and I kind of put it away, but it's interesting now that this is happening out here, and I've actually gotten involved. There was a big IOC event, a big military event last week, and we had our jazz quartet play, and I brought in a really wonderful opera singer to sing the national anthem, which was great. That was very different. For like, whoa, she added a few very high notes. So, So anyway, I chose to. So, but that said, though, going to music school, I really, I thought, okay, I'll go to music school. And I got there. Well, what's your major? What do you mean music? No, what is it? Is it in performance or music education? I didn't even at that point. I didn't even know it. I just wanted to study music. I didn't really have a specific thing, but actually I had teachers say, well, based on what you're interested in and just our conversations and the way the piano lessons were going, you should consider. I didn't want to be a performing pianist. So, you seem more like a composer maybe. But I didn't want to do that. And I actually had someone say, well, you maybe should consider conducting. So I put together some student orchestras, and I actually liked that part of it. I liked doing the whole thing. Not to be necessarily in charge, but I liked that there was an additional component besides just the performance. Excuse me. So ultimately, decided to try to do this. Most people, practically speaking, were saying, don't do it. Because, we're in Arkansas. How many professional full-time conductors are there in the whole state? I think there's 4. Wow. And in Texas, I don't know, 30. Yeah. So there's very few job opportunities.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So you've talked about kind of the evolution of the orchestra over the past 27 years that you've been here, and where it started, point A, where it is now. What are you excited for the future of the orchestra?
Well, at the time of this interview, we have some interesting projects for hopefully some more recordings. We did receive a large anonymous gift to do a program where, we bring in Grammy-winning artists, not classical ones, but people who do like jazz, new age, regional roots, all these various categories. People who've made recordings with orchestra, but they've never done it live. A lot of times with in these different genres, they'll record in the studio and then they'll maybe record the orchestra separately and do a mix. There's a lot of that. So it's sort of a program where we're helping these people with their first live symphony shows. And then they have a show that they can contact other orchestras and do with other orchestras. So the idea is helping expand that sort of programming that's really cool and unique, actually for the whole orchestral world, so they can hopefully get to do it in other places. Cool. And the flip side with that, so that's a cool project. And one of the neat things is, the artists who are going to come here, they're, incredible. It's unique because they will have never done anything or rarely done things live with orchestra. And they're coming partially because, and it's okay to say, we're also doing them a huge favor. We're helping them put these programs together. And because in the classical music world, in the orchestral world, as we were talking about earlier, we want to try, and other orchestras want to try to promote this idea of lots of different types of music, right? But when you actually get into doing it, sometimes there's limitations to the sort of concert programs that are available, guest artists that are actually available. I have a lot of people will say, oh, you should have so-and-so with the symphony, and maybe it's a country western artist or rock person. Well, they don't have music. They don't have the music to play with orchestra. They're cool artists, but they don't, and they just don't show up. And we just, we don't just make stuff up. We have to have arrangements, and you have to have arrangers, and that's very expensive. So that's that's one specific thing. We do have a few recording projects that should happen. We want to expand our educational programs a lot. We actually get a lot of requests, and our in-school programs that we do, actually starting next year, we want to start doing more of the rural schools, just kind of have keep doing this, reaching more students. Okay, and we've done performances at a lot of these schools in the past. You show up at a school and there's chickens in the front of the school, right? And these kids hearing live music, a live string quartet or a live jazz group, it's like they've never really
their first,
yeah. And again, it's something for them to think about. It's not about, well, maybe they'll become musicians, but it's just this live thing. It's something for them to think about and remember, and then it might get them interested in doing something else. Even a lot of the smaller rural schools, they might have a band program, might be really modest, but it doesn't matter. And if they have no money, well, your band will still provide you with an instrument. So it's a way to, these sort of things help also level the playing fields, for people. I'm kind of maybe getting off track, but I mean, so the idea, you're talking about future plans, the more things that we can do to add to the quality of life, to make a big difference for people through music, that's really the goal.
Yeah.
So
what are some of the educational programs that the Fort Smith Symphony offers?
So for the last 25-ish years, we've been doing a program called EarQuake, not earthquake. And that's where we give a free 2, sometimes 3 concerts at the Best Performing Arts Center. It's the full orchestra. It's a free concert, and the schools bus in their students. Currently, they're all 5th grade students because for most of the schools in our area, the 5th grade is the grade where the teacher asks, well, do you want to be in orchestra and band or choir next year in the 6th grade? So there's a total, there is a total recruiting component. You got the orchestra there, but as I said before, it's like, if you don't want to do music, that's okay, but do something else. There's other cool things. And EarQuake, we usually perform music that is loud and fast, hence the title. We do a lot of film music, things that kids would see. I'm looking at music right now from even stuff like from The Last of Us, that series.
Oh, yeah.
And that's available. And what was the other? Something from, I'll remember. The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Stuff, things that are very current. And then depending on the year, like this coming year, we did commission a composer to write a piece. So this idea of composers generally being deceased people. Well, there's a lot of film composers we do, but also we're going to play this piece, and the person who wrote it is right there.
Yeah.
And he's this person, and this is his job. So, and we've had dance some years. We've had film going on. It's hard to do the film thing now because it's a licensing, but we try to have a lot of different components. Oh, actually, for the Fort Smith Public Schools, and it's expanding for some of the other school systems who come to EarQuake. Forgot about this. The students know what the music is before they come to it.
Oh, cool.
And they listen to it in their art classes, and they do art that corresponds with the music.
Oh, cool.
And so there's a student art show in the lobby of the Performing Arts Center, and some of the teachers go totally nuts. And some of these things that are displayed, they're huge. Like they get a whole class or a couple of classes will combine on a project, and it'll be like the size of this wall. And it gives them a chance. They end up listening to music a lot, and this idea of experiencing an art form through another art medium, there's a lot of positives there.
Yeah.
So that's EarQuake. And then we do in-school programs. Bluegrass Live is for 2nd graders, and that's awesome. It's a bluegrass quartet, and they come in and they sing about, things that bluegrass songs are about. It's, it's generally not super complex story ideas. Right. I'm not saying that bluegrass can't be complex, right? But it's for young people, really young people, there's stories about animals and farmers. And what the bluegrass musicians are saying is kind of saying, really all music tells a story. And when you're at that age, that's like a really good first message when it comes. Also, this particular group has written a number of bluegrass pieces that have to do with Arkansas history, so they throw some of that in there too. It's great. And like our jazz quartet that goes into fourth grade classes, bluegrass and jazz are American musical idioms. And young people generally, sorry to say, are not familiar with our American musical styles.
Yeah, certainly.
So it's really important for them to get that. So we have the bluegrass in second grade. Third grade is Symphony in the Schools, Fort Smith Symphony String Quartet. They talk about string instruments. One of the musicians has a really old violin. So the kids are always, my gosh,
cool.
And but even with string quartet, they're mainly playing, film music. They played some Taylor Swift, I think they played some Adele or something like that. So they keep it real fresh.
Yeah.
So we have second, third, and fourth grade are in school. This year we visited 79 schools.
Wow.
And that's going to be expanded a little bit next year. So second, third, fourth grade, and then fifth grade is EarQuake. So hopefully then in sixth grade, they're involved in a creative thing. And that's where the schools come in. And it also supports the schools. So some schools really have seen a significant increase in, participation in their programs. And these programs are, they're definitely supporting the public school music programs. I mean, no question.
Yeah.
So...
It's amazing.
Yeah.
A theme that I feel like is kind of embedded into a lot of what you're saying is accessibility.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, making sure that what you're doing is accessible and, that's just really awesome. Because I think you mentioned this earlier, people thinking the orchestra is boring.
Mm-hmm.
But I sometimes also think that people think, oh, it's expensive or, oh, it's not.
It's for rich people.
Yeah.
Rich, fancy rich people. Exactly. And, there's parts of that where the classical music world, actually, they kind of like that.
Yeah.
And, and I don't remember all the details, but just as an example, the bluegrass group, another orchestra that will remain. Well, we wouldn't. It's not super close to here, but another orchestra saw that we did it and reached out to us and said, "Oh, this is fantastic. How did you do it?" And it was real easy to put together. So they reached out. This orchestra reached out to their musicians and said, "We want to do a bluegrass group." Musicians collectively responded, "How dare you ask us to do something like this?" So there you go. And, so when you talk about that people think it's, boring or whatever, unfortunately, the prejudice, there's a lot of justification for it. So, that is our biggest challenge. Yeah. And it happens all the time. I mean, I hear people come to the symphony and they love it, but you had to drag them there. Mm. Or, I've been living in Fort Smith for 25 years. I've always heard about the symphony, but I finally came after 25 years. Yeah. And that usually when that happens, they're really angry because, I waste, what have I been doing? Why didn't I come earlier? So, it's really... a lot of people think they know. I like the people who think they know what it is, but they've never been. Just try it.
Why not?
Man up and try it. Person up and try it. If you really don't like it, you call the office and we'll give you your money back. That's never happened. People are really blown away by the quality of it. It's a very much a big city thing here. Mm-hmm. We work hard at it. Just like professional football, like the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know where they all live. They're not all from Dallas, right? Very few. Our orchestra, they're mostly imports. So they come from about a 7-state area. So we have a huge hotel bill and a huge mileage bill. We love our local musicians. There just aren't that many.
Yeah.
So, we had 15 or 16 locals at Harry Potter, but the orchestra was 95 musicians. So there you go.
Yeah. Which Harry Potter was amazing. Sometimes I was watching the film and I forgot that there was an orchestra there because it was so good. I was like, it's amazing.
Those are fun to do. The orchestra really likes doing those too.
Yeah.
That's one of the harder scores.
Yeah.
And those movie concerts, they're great to do, but theoretically, originally, aesthetically, they're not designed to be done live. You're in a recording studio, something like the Quidditch match.
Right.
That's really hard. The Quidditch match is now on audition excerpt lists for big professional orchestras. It's now on there. I mean, it's that
involved. Wow.
Reviled.
Yeah, that's
it's
crazy.
it's so difficult. But it's the orchestra really enjoys it, and I like doing it because it's a huge challenge. There's sort of a man against machine thing a little bit, which is kind of fun. Because you've got to be where you need to be. It has to be. But also there's little things, it's fun to cheat a little bit. There's little things we can do. There's things to make it a little more expressive, So there's a lot going on. And we've done Harry Potter. We did a Star Trek Into Darkness the year, which that is a great score. I love doing that. And Raiders of the Lost Ark was before that. We've done some Chaplin movies, which are incredible, the silent movies. And that's all music written by Charlie Chaplin, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, and we've got, I don't want to date this, but I think Skyfall is coming up for this coming year. Yeah. And that'll be great.
I heard, that's awesome.
That's the other thing, too. All that stuff, well, even Raiders, even though Raiders of the Lost Ark and Harry Potter, even though those are both John Williams, they're very different scores, very different. And all these, when I think about the scores that we've done, they're very different. And, the James Bond, it couldn't be more different than Harry Potter.
Oh, sure.
So it's great to have that variety, even doing movies. And all the movies are very different, too. So it's really fun.
And different audiences. And yeah.
Exactly.
That's great. I love that. I do have a question about funding. Like, how can you talk about how you guys are funded? And
Sure. So, orchestras are nonprofit organizations. They are. So it depends on the orchestra, but usually about 25-ish %, 30% of our revenue comes from ticket sales.
Okay.
And, sometimes people go, well, that's not, you need to sell more tickets. And the challenge is that the whole idea of an orchestras were never designed to be money-making entities. They just weren't. A lot of arts things are that way. So there's that challenge. If we sold tickets to where we just made that was our sole revenue, we'd have to sell the tickets for, $200 or $300 or $400 each,
Yeah.
That's what orchestras do in big cities, but of course they have huge budgets. So the rest of the money comes from supporters, grants, a lot of corporate support, and individuals. And then we have different categories like where someone can basically underwrite a musician for a year as a chair sponsors.
Oh, nice.
And we have, that's a yearly thing. And we have pretty much the whole orchestra sponsored that way. So what's different up until this point, is that, for example, for the countries that are coming over for FMS, the European countries or Asian countries, it's just set up differently. In those countries, the government funds pretty much all of that. Now, we'll see what happens in the future because, and I don't want to be political, but with a lot of the European countries, well, all of a sudden now they're having to spend a lot more on defense. So whereas, they've never had to do that. In this country, like things like that's kind of being discussed right now are things like the National Endowment for all that. Government support for the arts, if you look at how big our country is, has always been really small. I think we get, up till this time, we get 1% from like the Arkansas Arts Council, NEA. On the flip side, I think in 2023, charitable giving in this country was $557 billion. Now, that's mostly tax-free. So you could make the argument, well, there's a lot of revenue that the government's not getting. It's allowing people to give money where they want to, as opposed to. So, there's pros and cons. We do very well. We have a small staff. I think we really we squeeze everything out of every penny. We're kind of known for that. So we've been very lucky. We have a lot of terrific supporters. If you go to our website, you can see, we have season sponsors and concert sponsors and co-sponsors, a lot of education sponsors. Mm-hmm. So,
and what's the website?
FortSmithSymphony.org.
Easy enough.
Yeah. And we have a Facebook and all that other good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, John. I really appreciate it. And I'm very thankful for what you're doing in our community. How it's not just concerts, it's being involved in the community in a variety of ways. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.